Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there. This is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. Same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. If you're viewing any of the podcasts on YouTube, please subscribe. To supporters of this podcast, we say thank you. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books. I'm available for speaking engagements, in-person and virtual seminars. So please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Rich Ingram, who is a retired United States Army captain. He is an inspirational and motivational speaker who performs powerful presentations with a message of perseverance and resilience. Despite losing his arm in combat, he continues to embrace life's challenges and thrive in adversity. I'm excited to have Rich come and share with us on this podcast, and I'm certain you're going to enjoy what he has to say. Rich, thank you again for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast. Would you share a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. So I am currently in Austin, Texas, and I have boxes all over my house because I just moved in the last week from New Orleans with three small children. So we just uprooted. They finally started summer camp, James. So I finally have some breathing room to unpack these
Okay.
boxes. So yeah,
Wow. Wow. Well, I tell you, you're gonna be busy for the rest of the summer. I can already tell. I can already tell that.
yeah,
Rich,
yeah.
Rich, Rich, I'm excited. I must admit that I have uh, read your profile, and it's very interesting and it's very inspiring. So, could you talk to us about what it is like when one receives an injury in combat? And I know that has happened to you, losing an arm. Uh, and so I know guests, I mean, listeners of this podcast would be kind of interested to know, what is it like? How did you feel? What happened? And just share a
Yeah.
little bit of that with us, please.
So, the backstory to that is I really found purpose in the military. I was shot out of a cannon like a supernova growing up,
Hmm.
with all this energy, but I didn't have any direction. And so I feel that I really found that in the military. I went to a military, it's one of six senior military colleges, and during that time, I joined the National Guard to commission as an active duty officer. There was a program where you could do that, and I really just thrived in that environment. So when we got orders to deploy to Iraq in 2005, I was ecstatic because that's what you train for, is to go to
Hmm.
war. And so about 3 months in, I was in a recon, I was infantry. I was in a reconnaissance platoon. I was on a four vehicle patrol, and I was the rear gunner in a Humvee. And so, back then, half your body is exposed
Hmm.
out of the Humvee, right? We didn't have the
Hmm.
big mine resistant vehicle, and my vehicle struck a roadside bomb. And
Wow.
yeah, and I had James. Every almost, except my father, almost every generation has been in a war in my family,
Hmm.
in the lineage, and so I always wanted to fill those shoes. I always wanted. There's no other honorable profession, and so that fight I was looking for to I
Hmm.
guess man up, so to speak, and try and fill those shoes didn't happen as I envisioned. And I
Wow.
just remember, yeah, I just remember saying, "Lights out, say a prayer," and
Mm-hmm.
I got catapulted out of the vehicle. And when I landed, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm alive!" But my driver was unconscious in the passenger seat. So when I went to move towards him, that's when I felt the
Mm.
achiness in my arm. But I didn't
Oh,
think I'd
wow.
lost my arm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I took my right hand to feel for the brake, and it just hit
Mm.
nothing.
Oh, wow.
And so, I look down and my arm is just laying there hanging on by something, a piece
Mm.
of flesh no bigger than a pinky finger. So I had to pick it up and run with it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I remember waking up in the hospital room after they did the final amputation in Baghdad,
Hmm.
and everything, my entire life, finally finding that purpose, everything came crashing down all at once because everything that I identified with was gone. I relied on my physical prowess to
Hmm.
spend my life in a combat arms career, and that was all gone.
Wow.
So you can imagine, what that's like,
Yeah, yeah. Rich, I feel you. And I guess first of all, let me just thank you for your service. And
Oh, thanks.
I was listening even on the TV this morning to the D-Day, Normandy, and it was really moving. And so I just want you to know how much I do appreciate it. I want to thank you. This is amazing. And I know you do a lot of keynote speaking from reading your profile. So could you tell listeners of this podcast, you know, what it what it is that you talk about, that inspires and motivate the audience. And they like to know that. And I'm asking you these questions because it, when I read your profile, it's so moving and it's very,
Thank
very
you.
touching. You've done so much, and I just want to expose it all to listeners of this podcast. So could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So my messages are my personal journey to basically where I'm at now. I went through a similar to you, a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of
Mhm.
challenges, a lot of adversity, crashed a couple times to
Mm.
to get to where I am now. But that's what my talks. I developed a framework called raw. I call it raw resilience, and so I
Okay.
intertwined that into my journey and my talks. And so I talk about purpose, mindset, and process. And so purpose being the true motivator, willpower is just an executive function in your brain it's a muscle. It operates like a tank of gas. Every time you hit it throughout the day, you're depleting that willpower. So, when you've gone through your day and you just fighting these battles and dealing with rejection and stressors, whatever it may be, that there's a reason why instead of eating that healthy dinner at the end of the day, you go for the latest potato chips, right? You don't got anything else to give. But when you find that purpose, and I'm not talking about a surface purpose,
Mhm.
I'm talking about you peel the onion back. Because
Mm.
I thought my purpose was soldiering,
Mm.
right? Well, what happens is purpose and identity are intertwined.
Mhm.
So if you just have this surface purpose and that's the only thing you identify with, and it gets taken away, who are you?
Mm.
What are you? And your emotional stability is going to suffer so much more if you can't find a purpose that is not going to change. So me, for example, I am a motivator. I
Mhm.
love to motivate, and that's something that will never be taken away from me, no matter if I get into a car crash and lose a leg.
Mhm.
uh, and then, another thing I talk about is mindset.
Okay.
And so mindset, uh, I had to start over,
Right.
right? And just a quick story. When I arrived at Walter Reed in Washington D.C., my mom. So another thing that I identified with was fly fishing.
Mhm.
That was being on a mountain trout stream is my sanctuary. I mean, I connect with the world, and in my opinion, you look at that and no way
Mhm.
there's not some creator, whoever you believe it is, whatever
Mm.
you believe it to be. That's how I connect.
Mm.
But with one arm and attached to an IV tree, I'm thinking like, why did she bring this fly rod? Well,
Mm.
a few days later, my cousin took me on the front lawn of the hospital, and we started trying to cast. And it wasn't long before I broke down in tears
Wow.
because
Wow.
another thing that I identified with was taken away from me.
mm,
And my cousin came over. He said, "Look, we're not going to leave until we get this. We're going to figure this out." And so I just channeled all that anger and frustration. And I figured out how to strip line using my teeth,
mm,
because fly fishing isn't like a
mhm,
Zedco. And I figured out how to manipulate the line with two fingers to cast. And
mm.
suddenly everything for me changed from what am I going to do now to whatever it takes, I will keep moving forward.
I love
And
it.
yeah, and so that's the mindset shift. The mindset shift for me happened because I lost my arm. So one of the
Mm,
things that I talk about is like, hey, man, look, I don't want you guys to have to lose an appendage to figure out how to shape your mindset and to really look at these setbacks and challenges as catalysts for growth. I always say, don't miss a failed opportunity. Don't
mm.
miss when you are feeling anxious, you're not cut out for it, or you've bitten off more than you can chew. Don't that's an opportunity to really dig deep and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What can I do about it? And then I'm gonna kind of look at my plan and boom, I just
I,
completely restructure what I'm doing.
I hear you. I hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I hear you. Rich, while we are on this, I do want to kind of just focus a little bit where I think some of the listeners of this podcast might be. I I, I practiced law for about 10 years, um, messed up, did something crazy, uh, called into the ministry. I just retired from pastoring after 32 years at the same church. And I'm also now serving as an interim, even at my home church. But when I retired, one of the things I was thinking about just a couple of months before I retired, what am I going to do? So I thought about continuing my ministry with doing a podcast. Never done one before. I said, but let me see if I can get this thing going. And I want to just talk about, ask people to tell us their story, and hopefully I could share something that would be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming to people because folk are going through something. They're dealing with this issue. They're dealing with that issue. The reason you were so interesting to me because I know where you've gone just from looking at your profile. And so if there's somebody out there who is going through something, and it may not be what you went through, but it could be anything. And they just feel like they're at the bottom. They can't make it. See, I've been there, and I feel like you've been there. What would you say to them that would could give them some encouragement, that would be inspiring, and hopefully transforming to them? Is that a word that you would share?
Absolutely. So first off, you're not alone. It's everything is relative.
Mm,
You can see what happened to me.
mm.
Most people, you can't see what's
Oh,
happened to them.
I love it. I
and
hear you.
and but it's all relative to how we think about it. And so the
Mhm,
one thing that I always try and say is our pains and gains are equitable. There's
mm,
not one clinically sane person that has not gone through some kind of trauma or some kind of anxiety, or we might, I hate saying negative
mhm,
emotions,
mhm,
but I will say emotional maybe instability. uh some people it's chemically, right?
mm,
Some people may just have different chemicals in their body that cause them to stay in those anxious or depressive states longer.
mm,
And so I will give one tool that I do, and I kind of just talked about it, but I do this whenever I start feeling down or whatever it may be. I stop. One, I try and meditate or do some breathing exercises if I have time. Two, I have a composition notebook I take everywhere with me, and I write down exactly how I'm feeling.
mm,
I am feeling I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling like a failure. Whatever it may be. Second, why are you feeling this way? Okay, well, I have not made any sales this past week, or my children or XYZ,
mm,
whatever it
mm,
is. And then the third thing is, okay, you made a plan when you were in a positive emotional state. You were stable in your emotions. What was that plan? Are you acting according and executing according to what that plan is? If you're not, okay, well, maybe I need to get back on. If you
Mm,
are, well, then maybe you need to double down and you need to dig a little deeper, add to the plan, or you just stay the course,
mm,
right?
I
And
hear
then
you.
some positive affirmations. I am a great father. I do provide value to people. I do this
Hmm.
because what you tell yourself
Hmm.
100% is direct reflection of your output.
I hear you.
So that's my, but a
I
little
got it.
long winded, but that's my 2 cents.
Oh, I got it. I
That's,
got
you
it.
know,
I got it, Rick. I got it. I know exactly where you're coming from. And I'm certain that listeners of this podcast, will get that too, because it's powerful. And we've all been there. We've all had those low moments. And that's what this podcast is all about. Hopefully to lift somebody up who find themselves in a valley, a lot, if I can say it that way. Let me ask you this. How did recovery at Walter Reed Army Medical Center prepare you for where you are today? If I could ask you that question.
amazing. I had, and I'll tell you what really happened for me after that fly fishing experience, my mindset shift. I was asked to be on a triathlon team,
Hmm.
and there was a nonprofit called Challenge Athletes Foundation that was setting up um, a, a subsidiary specifically for the reintegration of wounded soldiers. And their capstone was triathlon. So a guy asked me to be on his triathlon team, and that set my rehabilitative journey on completely different level. I am
Mm,
100% advocate for physical fitness and attaining and setting ambitious fitness goals for a part of a rehabilitative journey for your emotional stability.
mm,
And that's what I did. I immersed myself in that while I was at Walter Reed. And I set a goal for myself to be out of there by December. I said, I'm going to be out of here. And I was in that
mhm,
clinic, I mean, every day. Again, whatever it takes, keep moving forward.
mm.
And I just that's how I took that rehabilitation, and I couldn't have had a better experience while I was there.
Wow, wow, exciting and very, very moving, Rich. Um, Listeners, I've got a couple more questions uh, in this dialogue, so don't go into place. Stay tight right now. But I, I want to ask Rick if there are listeners out there who've just been so taken by your story, interested in knowing more about you, whether you've got a website, whether you've got a book, or anything of that nature. Can you share any information with them at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is richingram.com. Pretty easy. I am in the process of writing a book. It has not hit market right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not that great at social media. But richingram.com, that's where you go, and you'll kind of find a little bit more about me and my journey as, the
Okay.
first amputee to commission as an officer and become an ultra marathon athlete. So yeah,
Okay. Okay. I take it that you do lots of public speaking. Am I correct about that?
that's right. I
Okay.
do.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you so very much. Let me end this by asking you this question because I know that after retirement, I noticed that in your profile, you held leadership positions with a Fortune 500 company, and you built and sold a profitable small business. Now, uh, if you can, without violating, any ethical norms, could you share with listeners uh, a little about this, how it worked, the Fortune 500 company, and as I said, without violating ethical norms. I don't know how far you can go, but I know listeners sometimes like to know as much as they can about the guests. So, is there anything you can share regarding that?
Yeah, so I retired from the military twice, right?
Okay.
And the first time was after I lost my arm, and then I came back in as an officer. And so when, after that second stint, my fourth deployment, I was recruited by a junior military officer recruiting company, and so I worked with a company called Kinder Morgan,
Okay.
and you know, it was one of the best companies. Or is one of the best companies that's is out there. So it's in oil and gas. And I managed operations
Hmm.
for multiple facilities and some other things. And but then I realized that okay, I'm having a great experience here, but I think there's more out there. And so,
Yeah.
going back to that purpose, I think you need to be living your purpose. You need to be following that dream. That's what's going to make you happy. And so I tried my arm in no pun intended in small business and sales and it worked really well. It was processes, right? Sales is a process. It doesn't matter what you're selling. And so I just grinded, and then I realized, like, man, I'm not a salesman
Okay.
at all. And that's, I started getting asked to speak again and some of this other stuff, and I was into running, and so I was like, you know what, that is my passion, trying to help other
Okay.
people find their way. So
Oh,
that's how I
okay.
ended up where I am.
Okay. Great. Beautiful. I love that. Before we close, Rich, is there anything that we've kind of missed that you would like to share with listeners of this podcast? You have such an awesome story. I don't want to leave without you imparting something else that you feel like I have not talked about, I've not asked you about. So is there anything else that you like to just share?
James, I think we hit a lot. I think for
Okay.
a lot of people, if you are in a certain situation, just remember you're not alone. It is part of your journey.
Mm,
Just
mm.
continue moving forward and use it as an opportunity to grow and really as a catalyst
Wow.
to move forward.
Wow. Wow. Rich, thank you so very much for such a amazing and powerful interview. And I'm certain that listeners of this podcast will benefit from your sharing. And again, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, James, for sure.
And there you have it, Rich Ingram sharing with us today. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.